Hey everybody! At least for the ones who got to join from the last sessions, this is a panel debate, and we already have the full panel available. So please take it away.
So I'm Kay Sargent. I'm Director of Workplace at HOK. I am based in Washington, D.C., but I travel internationally, and I work with all of our large corporate clients who have millions of square feet all around the world and don't like surprises. So we do a lot of future casting about what might be coming and helping them prepare for the future.
Okay, maybe I'll go next. My name is Ken Dooley. I'm based in Helsinki. I'm the Chief Strategy Officer for Empathic Building at Haltian. Empathic Building is kind of like a user interface, a pretty user interface mostly for office buildings. And I have more of a real estate, although I work for kind of a software company now, I have more of a real estate, energy, real estate economics, kind of climate change, smart buildings background.
Okay, my name is Wiebe Kolsta. I'm a digital workplace architect. I work for an insurance company here in The Hague in Holland, where I'm based. Also done lots of work in smart buildings in my former role at Virgin Media and Liberty Global. So I'm kind of the edge of facility management and digital workplace.
So guys, can I throw down a challenge?
Yep.
Can I start by saying something, and I'll make the provocative statement and throw down a challenge for us to dive into. As a designer, I am going to say that we have done in the real estate industry, I think we have done a really bad job of fully embracing technology to its fullest potential, and that we are way behind where we could be. And to prove that point, I will say that I can sit in my house, automatically start my car, have it heated up, walk out, it knows it's me, it unlocks the door, and everything in the car is automatically adjusted to my preset preferences. If my son walked out to the car, it would adjust to his preferences. The mirror, the seats, the music that I like, the temperature that I like, and my phone syncs with the dashboard, and everything is there. In the workplace, most of us are still crawling around on the floor trying to find an outlet. We have a better experience, and it's easier to get through an airport today than it is to get into most office buildings. And I will acknowledge that the US is farther behind in this regard, that the Europeans have done a better job of embracing smarter buildings and intuitive places. But I look at this pandemic as an opportunity. I'm going to say the first domino has fallen, because we've had the ability to do more in the workplace for a long time, but not the catalyst to force everybody's hand to do it. And now that nobody wants to touch anything, and we want to make things more seamless, and people want more predictability and control, maybe we are finally at the point where we will embrace technology and truly leverage it to its greatest potential, which is empowering the user experience. Not just managing a building or monitoring the people, but truly empowering people to have a more intuitive, better, and more controlled workplace. So that's my challenge, and that's my thought. So go, guys. What do you think?
I think you have a nice car. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Well, I think you have a very nice car.
Actually, I have 5 children. I don't have that car. My neighbors do. So
okay.
I don't even have a car.
No, but I think I would agree. But that's not only for the physical workplace. It's also for the digital workplace. If you go to the office, you go back in time because you can't do what you really like to do. And in the early days, it was the other way around. When you came to the office, they had better computers than you had. Now it's the other way around, and at home you have more possibilities of. But that's mainly because the lack of funding, the lack of feeling the urge to work on it, the lack of collaboration between facilities and the digital workplace team, if it was there in any way, because lots of companies didn't have a digital workplace team a couple of years back. So there is lots of opportunities over there, but also I think we shouldn't overestimate the power of technology, because it's still people who have to do it. And this AI and machine learning and augmented reality, and it's all very promising, but it's still very early days. It's far from perfect. It will mature over time, so we have to invest in it. But I think we also have to be, honest that we now should start working together and embrace the opportunities that are there in this technology, and build a hybrid workplace where people can really work with ease, but also keep those physical and how do you call it, meetings for people to really be a human. Overall, it's as Satya Nadella said last week, it's technology enhances humanity, and it shouldn't replace humanity, I would say.
Yeah, and I think what you said, Kay, makes a huge amount of sense, and it's something we've seen a couple of years ago. One thing that drove a huge amount of change was Uber and Uber Eats and Foodora, and these people would say, I can press 2 buttons and a taxi comes. It already knows where I'm going. I can get in the taxi and walk away. I don't have to have a credit card or type in a PIN. I can click 2 buttons and refill yesterday's sushi order, and food magically appears at my door. Why does it take 15 clicks to book a meeting room? And I think as an industry, we've kind of been guilty of doing very little, or else going all into this super technology, augmented reality, virtual reality, digital twins kind of element, which has been taking longer than we thought. And I know we really heard the kind of user experience elements of, really save me time. Make it, if you put in some technology, make it easier. What the hell is a QR code kind of things? So we would be putting, let's say, CO2 sensors in buildings, and people would say, I've no interest in the CO2 sensor. And they'd ask something really practical around time. Show me where the meeting rooms are, or the free desks are, or a really practical one for an office campus. There's 2 or 3 restaurants. Can you tell me when the queues are long, so I can look at a gap in the queue and I can grab my team, let's go for lunch. So in our 30-minute lunch break, we save 7 minutes or something for queuing. So really, really practical. And I talk about them as kind of sweet spot technologies. Putting the lunch menu on the intranet is a digital solution, and then people stop. And then the other people are promising an augmented reality something. But there is something in between that's achievable, and it's really about these human elements like time and easy to use and choice.
Okay, so let's dive into that for a minute. So I'm going to say that we as people do a really good job of predicting technology and creating technology. But back to the point that you were making, it's really about the how people will accept it or adopt it, right? If I don't like it, I'm not going to use it. So I'm going to give you a few examples. If you think about, like, I don't know if there's a Star Trek fan on the call, or the Jetsons fans, those shows actually did a really good job of predicting technology. Where they really fell apart, though, was predicting social elements and whether people would accept those things. Like, if you think back on either one of those shows, they're really incredibly sexist in the way that they portray women. They got the technology part, but the social elements they totally failed on. Okay, so now let's take it to today. We've had the ability to do a lot of this stuff for a long time. What is the tipping point that really forces everybody's hands? There's always a tipping point. Okay, so we've had facial recognition for a while, and facial recognition didn't really take off. And 5 years ago, I would have gone to all the millennials out there and said, hey, do you mind if we facially recognize, and map your face so that we have a record of you? Most people would have been like, no, I'm not okay with that. And so people predicted that it would take a long time to really get to that point of social recognition and facial recognition. But it all basically happened in a matter of 6 months because of Snapchat. Because Snapchat enabled an entire generation to put doggy ears and a little tongue coming out of your mouth, and an entire generation unknowingly basically had their faces digitally mapped, and their parents. And so it almost happened overnight, to the point now that we have to try to catch up with that, right? And so right now, I think the tipping point for buildings is that people want more control. They want predictability. They don't want to touch things. They want to know if I'm going to go, where am I going to sit, who am I going to be near. I don't want to go to the cafeteria. I want it brought to me. I don't want to have to touch things. I don't want to have to pay credit cards, whatever. And so we are much more willing to accept. And so the Internet of Things, which we're going to call Sensor 1.0, where those sensors were monitoring people, it's now evolving to Sensor 2.0, which is where the people are tapping into the sensors to get and leverage information to create a better experience. And that, I think, is when we're at that tipping point where people now are going to want it because you're doing something for me and I like that, versus that sensor is monitoring me and I don't like that.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think the visibility of the technology and the interactiveness of the technology is really important. But one thing before I kind of build on that, I think one element that's here as well is that, you know, building owners or building project managers, they're kind of being hit with a huge amount of technology at the same time in the last 4 or 5 years. It might be smart grid or blockchain or predictive maintenance. And then we have the kind of low value add, kind of turning on lights with your voice and, you know, having Siri help you and electric car charging points or whatever it is. And there's a lot of nice to have value, but there's not kind of must have value. So exactly what you said there, Kay. I think it's things that we interact with on a daily basis. So if there is, for example, you know, with COVID, and if we're conscious about the kind of the freshness of the air in meeting rooms or something like that, the solution 5 years ago was to have some sensors and have a dashboard in the foyer or something saying, this is the freshness of the air, everything's fine. You look at it once and you never look at it for 10 years. I think what we're really interested in is having some visibility and interactiveness with that. So I book a meeting room, or I'm looking for an ad hoc space now, and a virtual assistant says, okay, you want always a room with a window. You want a room with the best fresh air within, you know, a 1 kilometer walk. Or I might even say, actually nudge me to make more steps. Give me good fresh air.
Where is it? Where are my coworkers? Where is it warmer? Where is it cooler? Right? All of those things you can control now.
Yeah, and it can't just be the water is clean and we have a sensor that tells us that. It needs to be something that, if possible,
because I expect that.
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
the bare minimum.
Yeah, and we're a little bit spoiled in a certain way, but it needs to be something I interact with and helps me and saves me time or something. And what I was going to say there was maybe the assistant actually picks the furthest away meeting room that's available and forces me to get more steps in my day. And then that's turning something into a kind of a health and well-being thing instead of. But what happens is that the assistant flashes up and says, hey, Ken, I picked the furthest meeting room away from you, or the room with fresh air. And when it makes that statement, I go, okay, you know, it's helped me there. It isn't just, here's your meeting room.
Yeah, so Ken, is that going to be, you know?
Yeah. There's an element of when I use it, it tells me it helped me, as opposed to just, you know, something that's kind of is hidden behind it.
Is that the system telling me, I know you had a hamburger for lunch, so you need extra steps because you passed on the salad, it went right for the burger and fries?
Exactly.
Yeah, then you are on the dark side again.
Yeah.
Oh, I can go to the dark side if you want me to. You know, my favorite quote really is Stephen Hawking basically says, and I'm going to butcher the quote, so I apologize. We basically are in a race with technology right now on how quickly it is evolving and how intelligently we allow it to evolve. And I really think that's true. You know, I think we are dumbing into a lot of things and letting things happen versus understanding, you know, we let certain, you know, cats out of the bag, like all this DNA testing. You know, I think most people are like, oh, that's great, I get to know my ancestry. And then all of a sudden you have this aha moment. It's like, I've given my DNA to a lab, right?
Yeah.
You know, did I really mean to do that? Or I just allowed Snapchat to digitally map my face. Did I intend to do that? And I think we're not being very smart about this right now. And the cat might be out of the bag, has run down the street and already had kittens, and we can't put it back. But anyway.
Well, we have a large digital responsibility, but I don't think ignoring would be the best way to do, nor saying no, because it's going to happen anyway. So we have to be on top of it and work on it together. And as far as the building concerns, I seriously believe that the building has to hook into the digital workplace, because the things you said just a minute ago, Ken, was that when you are in the building, but you will always have distributed teams. We already had those because we were globally or worked on different locations anyway. But that's going to be a bit more, I believe, with people working from home. Maybe if there's some traveling involved again, people working on the road, and then you want to have this. Well, very nice way of ad hoc collaboration, and not being a second-hand person when you're not in the building, being somewhere in the corner of the room, not heard because you're not loud enough, or not seen because your video isn't working. So all this stuff should be really on par if we want to work in that way, and also keep the productivity high, and be really inclusive to all those people working for us.
Yeah, actually, that was the next thing I was going to say, kind of about inclusivity. I've done apps in the past, or solutions in the past, that actually use text messages rather than something else, because we wanted it to be inclusive of everyone, not just the people who had smartphones or who understood smartphones. So, for example, our solution is a web app, not a native app in Android or iPhone, because we can send it to people in a text message or in an email, and they can click it on their laptop or whatever. So do we need to be conscious of, if, you know, are the people who give their face getting a better employee experience than the people who don't? Do we have to have the same level of service or experience for people who are conservative in technology? Because I live in the Nordics, we're here in Finland, and that's something really important here. And we would err on the side of caution and really bringing inclusiveness and kind of intuitive and easy to use into the solutions.
Yeah.
So let me map out two scenarios here for you. One I heard 4 or 5 years ago in the Nordics that literally scared the bejesus out of me, and the other one that actually gives me, and they actually kind of, I think maybe both give me hope. Sitting in a conference room a few years ago, listening to a scenario about what we have the ability to do, and not only do with sensors and all, you know, the things that we have, the biometrics, et cetera, not only do we have the ability to know how many people are in a conference room, but who is in the conference room. And because of our biometrics and facial recognition, we can identify, wow, you know what? Ken did not like what I said 5 minutes into the meeting. His blood pressure like rose, and he got really agitated, and the look on his face, and he got really annoyed, you know, and reports can be given to your manager. So you walk out of a room and your manager walks up to you and said, what was it that Kay said that really made you mad 5 minutes into the meeting or 10 minutes into the meeting? And by the way, your biosensor is showing that, you know, you've got a little bit of an elevated temperature. You might want to go home because you're about to get sick, right? That notion kind of freaked me out a little bit, right? That we actually can get to that point. However, let me paint another scenario of all of this. When we think about what a meeting might be in the future, and how are we going to have this hybrid, some people are in the room, some people aren't, you know, how do we make this a better experience? I'm a big American football fan, but, you know, think about a sporting event, right? So when you're in the stands, you kind of are watching it live, and you don't get the replay, or you don't get the zoom in, or if you didn't see somebody's reaction, you missed it, okay? Now, we will probably have more cameras in the room that are zoning in on things, and we're getting more of that experience like you would when you're at home, where you get the replay. You can see people's reaction. You can go back and rehear what somebody said, if somebody said something, right? And you can zoom in on, you know, who just said something, and what was the room's reaction, and having multiple different views. And so it's almost like, I don't know if it's information overload, but I don't think it's going to be the typical experience we had before, nor do I think it's going to be what we're experiencing right now, where it's just 4 faces on a screen, right? I'm really fortunate that I'm on the AVIXA board, which is the AVIT integrators, and the things that are coming out in the next year or two from a software and technology standpoint that will help address some of these issues are really next level. And so it could be really, really exciting. But I also think it's really important also to realize, again, 55% of communication is nonverbal. And there's a whole lot we miss that when we're not in the room. You know, some of the most important things in a meeting happen when you walk outside the door. And right now, a meeting is over and it just ends. You don't have that aftermath in the hallway of saying, my God, can you believe what Morton said? Like, do you believe he said that? And what did you think of that meeting? I don't know if I agree with, you know, blah, 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 blah. And Ken was right on when he said it, right? All of that we're kind of missing. So we have to think of other ways that we can capture that. And they're working on that, which is exciting.
Yeah, I know. And I really like that also, that we are trying to mimicking the old way of working in the new world. And I've seen Microsoft Mesh, for example, last week, and there they did with their new HoloLens, they had virtual worlds where you could meet up in next to real life. But that will, I think that will take some time before it really gets mature.
Yeah, the avatar thing is.
Yeah. But I don't like seeing people without arms and legs and stuff, so that freaked me out. But but it will get better. It will get better over time. But I think also that there's always a good and a bad side, and as long as we take the good side of this and don't feel, and that's what I wanted to say, was that we really have to work on culture as well in these companies, that you don't have to be afraid to be followed by a manager, because he's the one who cares for you, and your company cares for you, and that's because you're their biggest asset. I mean, we are the company in the end.
Yeah. And just one thing about the biometrics in a meeting room, like, you need to have a camera in that meeting room, and I even already see sensors, radar sensors that fit above the roof that do the same thing as cameras, but can't do those kind of things and aren't called a camera, and aren't visible. It's a sensor. And I think, you know, it's really interesting when WhatsApp changed its privacy settings, that like Signal and Telegram, that were always there waiting in the midst. And if you look at Harvard professor Shoshana Zuboff's book a couple of years ago called Climate Surveillance Capitalism, that one way to compete with these monsters like WhatsApp or Facebook is to do the same thing, but in a much more ethical and safe way. So I don't think we'll have cameras in the Nordics in meeting rooms. We might have a thermographic imaging camera or something, but I don't think we're going to have those biometrics or access to a smart ring anytime soon.
Yeah, it's really fascinating how different.
In the Nordics is to make sure people don't die from hypothermia because it's cold. So that would be unfortunate. So I really love this panel debate. I have to say, I just want to be conscious of time, so it's not to cut anything off. It's a super valid points the whole way around. Really interesting. And I'm an historian by trade, so the good part of history is that humans will always be human. The thing is, you know, humans are humans no matter what the technology is, but our ability to come to grips with the technology is not always that successful. And as technology gets into a more steep climb, then the disparity between what the technology can do and what we understand that it can do might increase. So that might be an issue. So, but super valid points all around. Really super interesting. Really interesting. I know we're about to close the event. Oh, there's Marty. So maybe you can take it from here, just to make sure that we get a right exit phase around this.
Yeah. I mean, the room can stay open. So if you'd like to continue, or somebody would like to stick around, you can even join via video to ask your question. I see that there is a question from Balazs. You can, some of you can answer it. Do you see the question, the panelists? Or should I read it?
Yeah, I think it's, can we change with the alpha generation who were born into the wireless? You know, it's interesting because they actually are saying that the younger generation, their brains are literally wired differently, because they are multimodal, right? You know, so I have 5 children, and I am just it never ceases to amaze me. You know, for me to study or concentrate, that means sitting in a place, turning off all the distractions and focusing. But they have always lived in a world where so much stuff is coming at them from multimodal interactions, that they process things differently and actually almost need that different kind of stimuli coming at them. And so this is why, like, my kids are sitting there watching the TV, listening to music and doing their homework. And it's like, how can you even do that? But they literally have shown that their brains are wired differently. And so your whole point about the fact, you know, evolution, I think it is taking a toll on all of us, and it is starting to, you know, different generations will respond a little bit differently. I also find it fascinating that different regions of the world, you know, what is okay in China is not okay in the US, is not okay in the Nordics. What's okay in the Nordics might not be okay in the US. You know, I find it really interesting that we have cultural tolerances that we will accept or not accept, and how those are changing and evolving over time.
Yeah, but I also find it very hopeful that those kids still want to meet in real life, and I think they learned to appreciate that more in the lockdown. The last couple of months, at least if I look here in the Netherlands, it's really a big issue that those kids didn't meet up on schools anymore and stuff, and they were really feeling lonely. So that's the good thing. I think we draw them away from their screens a bit. So there's a good thing in this also, a little bit.
Well, you know, statistically, they're saying that we have the highest rate of teenage depression that we've ever had, and that even though kids today are more connected than they've ever been, they are also more socially isolated, because you might have 20,000 friends or 10,000 or 5,000 or 10, but how many of them are real friends, deep, meaningful connections? And also, Facebook depression is a real thing, right? You're comparing yourself to everybody's best life that they post for 5 minutes, and nobody puts their B side of what's happening, you know, on Facebook. And so on outward appearances, it looks like everybody else is living the dream, and you might have had a bad day. Everybody else might have had a bad day too, but they're not posting that, right? But you're comparing it to your whole thing. And so I think we really need to be careful. I mean, social media and the damage that it has done. This is someone coming from the US, looking at the elections and the misinformation and just all of this. That's a real issue and a real challenge, and we really need to, as a society, address this.
Yeah, but in the end, it's the people behind social media and on social media that do those bad things, because most of the time the tools aren't to blame, but the people abusing them or misusing them are to blame. Not sure what we can do about it, but
right?
Okay,
you know, and I think it's really interesting. MIT created an artificial intelligence, and they named it Norman. They even put a face to it, and they fed it a bunch of information from Reddit. And what they found is it took a very, very dark view, and they were really surprised by that. And what they realized is, as humans, we have a sunny disposition. We want to believe the positive, where artificial intelligence literally just takes everything literally at its word and logically tells you things. And that can sometimes mean very, very dark things. If you think again about Star Trek, you know, Data never could understand why people would do humane things, because it just didn't logically make sense. And I think it's our humanity here that is going to save us. And I think it's our humanity that is in a race with technology. And we have to be really, really careful to make sure that we're balancing those.
Yep, agree.
Yeah, I think there's a really interesting comment from Balak, who asked the question about kind of brains wired differently, but also says that the amount you process maybe reduces your understanding. So if you're taking in 2 pieces of information at the same time, do you really? And I think I feel like an old man when I hear of people watching movies on 1.5 speed and actually listening to podcasts on 1.5 speed. So, you know, are these people just better than us? Like 50% better than us? Or is there a cost to that kind of interaction? I really don't know the answer. I don't think I could possibly do it. But there's elements there where I kind of go, oh my God, that's scary, in a sad for you, but sad for me simultaneously. But that's something that I think really chimes in there to some of the questions.
Yep. Yeah, sorry to interrupt. Many of the attendees already need to go. Okay, as well, she just posted. So thanks for joining us. We still have 2 more occasions next week and the week after. So hold your thought. There's still time to answer those questions and discuss it. Thanks for all the speakers. Our chairman, Morten, thank you very much. I think it was very enlightening presentations and discussions. So we're going to meet again in a week. Kay will be there as well with a presentation and many other interesting presentations as well. So I'm going to inform you about timings and procedures. But yeah, see you soon, latest in a week.
Thanks, guys.
Great.
Thank you
Thanks.
all. Have a
Thank
great
you all.
day. Yep,
You
bye.
too. Bye.